The Philadelphia Eagles are the number one seed in the NFC playoffs and divisional champions of the NFC East, but the way they did it wasn't ideal. The final stock up, stock down of the Locked On Eagles podcast in 2022 coming up next after a 22-16 win over the New York Giants.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcoming Eagles fans to a Tuesday edition of the show, and it's presented by Prize Picks Daily Fantasy, made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. The Eagles are NFC East champions. They're the number one seed in the NFC. The playoffs will run through Philadelphia after Sunday's 22-16 win over Davis Webb and the backup New York Giants. And it took an onside kick at the end to close this thing out. But the fact of the matter is the playoffs will run. The path to the Super Bowl in Arizona will run through Philadelphia. Today, got some positives and negatives from that game. You can find my full game recap on yesterday's show. I was pretty fiery, but at the same time, I looked at the positives, took a look back at all the great historic things that were done in the 2022 season. So you can find that podcast on all platforms. Like I said, though, today, it's the final stock up, stock down of the 2022 season. Who struggled and who shined in that win over the New York Giants? And I want to talk about first, as we always do on stock up, stock down, it's Jalen Hurts, who returned to the lineup after missing the Dallas Cowboys game, after missing the New Orleans Saints game. You lose your MVP quarterback, and they lost both games without him, definitely showing his value. Yes, the Eagles have, to me, the best roster in football, and they have provided Jalen Hurts with maybe the best support system any Eagles quarterback has ever had, and that's definitely true, and that can definitely elevate the quarterback position when you don't have an elite player. But when it came to that MVP conversation between Hurts and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, some people would say, well, remove Jalen Hurts and put a good, not great quarterback in there. How much worse off really are they? Almost questioning Jalen Hurts' value as if, having an elite roster and having an elite quarterback are mutually exclusive. I should say having an elite roster and Jalen Hurts being valuable are mutually exclusive. I think we saw the value of Jalen Hurts in both of those losses when you had Gardner Minshew under center, but also you saw the value of him in that New York Giants game. And honestly, that was the worst game of Jalen Hurts' season, for sure. Didn't have a single touchdown, threw a bad interception, did not run barely at all, only 11 rushing yards on the year. Was playing through a shoulder injury. He was hurting, didn't really, like I said, run at all, and didn't take any super aggressive chances. The playbook was very vanilla. It was almost like a preseason game. They were just trying to get through it, get the win, and keep Jalen healthy and have 2 weeks to heal that shoulder for the divisional round. But honestly, even in that kind of lackluster performance where the offense was sputtering in the red zone and Jalen did make a really bad interception in like quadruple coverage, definitely was being aggressive in that moment, put the game away. I think you still, though, saw the value of Jalen. I think you saw the impact of just his presence on the field, calming almost confidence this offense had. Everything was just working so much better. There weren't many, drive-killing penalties and, costly turnovers in your own area, turnovers in crucial moments like late in the game, as you saw with Gardner Minshew the 2 weeks before that. It just felt like you really saw the value of, maybe not Jalen's, physical abilities on the field. We know the value of that, but I think you saw more in that game the impact of just his overall command of the huddle, his confidence, his leadership. I think that was definitely shown, and I think he's already, to be honest with you, looking through the history of Eagles quarterbacks and just overall leaders, Jalen is one of the best leaders in Eagles history, and I think he's the greatest leader at the quarterback position that Philadelphia has ever seen. 100%. I think you saw that against the Giants. Again, he didn't do anything flashy, but just having him back, I think everybody just felt a little sigh of relief. And I think that's a huge, huge positive heading into the postseason when the stage gets bigger. I think Nick Sirianni said it best, where the higher you get to the mountain, the air gets thinner and everything gets more tense. But for Jalen Hurts, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if anything will phase him. Getting benched in a national championship didn't. I don't think a close game in an NFC title or a Super Bowl, a situation like Nick Foles had in Super Bowl 52, I don't know if that will ever phase him. The Giants game, that was a ton of pressure. Yeah, it was against backups, but the Eagles don't win that game, and obviously the Cowboys blew it. We knew now against Washington, but if they won that game and the Eagles lost against New York, they were the 5 seed heading on the road, despite being the best team in football for 95% of the season. So Jalen was calm, even though he was hurt. He didn't let you know about it and just got the job done. And I really think that you saw the value of Jalen over these past 3 games. So yes, is the Eagles roster incredibly talented at every phase? Is there a weakness? Not really. Does that help a quarterback succeed? Of course it does. But again, it's not mutually exclusive that the Eagles can have an elite support system for Jalen, and Jalen Hurts can still be one of, if not the most valuable players in the entire NFL. So let's really hope that he can heal that shoulder even more these next 2 weeks. Hopefully they, because they're not going to hold back the playbook in the playoffs like they did against the Giants. They are going to dial up run plays, lots of RPOs, and I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to hesitate either to make, big runs and to take chances. Because the Giants game, you could definitely tell even Hurts was trying to be smart. There were certain plays that normally he would try to get that first down scrambling where he slid or he threw the ball away. He wanted to be conservative. He wanted to just get to the playoffs, get that 1 seed, do the bare minimum, be smart, and then in the playoffs, really ramp it up. So hopefully he can get that shoulder as close to 100% as he can over these final 2 weeks before the divisional round at Lincoln Financial Field. All right, guys, stock up, stock down. Coming up next, right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. It's a Tuesday edition of the show. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Prize Picks Daily Fantasy. So much fun playing with Prize Picks during the 2022 season. I made a lot of money hammering the over on Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, and Miles Sanders, you name it, even sometimes Quez Watkins. So here's how Prize Picks work. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projection available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you watch. Of course, the NFL, college football, college basketball, women's basketball, the NBA, MLB, NHL, cricket, esports, you name it, combat sports like the MMA and boxing. It's all available, even Euro basketball at PrizePicks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. So if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. And if you deposit $50, they'll give you $50. Don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And guys, today's Locked On Eagles is also sponsored by TurboTax. Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you don't have to yourself. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes, a lullaby. Hope not taxes sleeps through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed, so you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax. Full service product only. Video meeting while experts does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. I'm Louis DiBiase. Thanks so much for tuning into this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles, and thanks for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, make sure as well you subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday, and Monday local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your shows. So today it's crazy. Time absolutely flies, but it's the final stock up, stock down of the 2022 regular season. Who shined and who struggled in the Eagles' 22-16 win over New York, the Giants to clinch the number 1 seed, and the NFC East division championship. And there were a lot of negatives in that game. That should have been a 30-point win, not a 6-point win against Davis Webb and backups. But at the same time, there were a lot of positives to take from that win. And I think number one, and these guys have been on a tear over the last, really all season, but especially the second half of the year. It feels like they've been in the stock up column every single week, and it's the best wide receiver duo in Eagles history. It's DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown. It was an awesome record-setting day for both of them against the Giants. A.J. Brown, in his first year as an Eagle, breaks Mike Quick's single-season receiving yards record. He finished the 2022 season with 88 catches for 1,496 yards, also 11 touchdowns. Those 88 receptions, that ties Irving Fryer for the second most receptions in a single season by a wide receiver in Eagles history. Number one, well, DeVonta Smith, he broke that record from Irving Fryer with 7 catches against the Giants for 67 yards. DeVonta Smith finishes with 95 receptions on the year, 1,196 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And DeVonta's been eating lately. He's gone nuclear. It's been so fun to see just some of the difficult catches he's made. And A.J. Brown, too, you just show the tape from the Cowboys game and the Saints, and even this past week against the Giants, how many tough grabs these guys make and how good they make their quarterbacks look. Obviously, Jalen Hurts' ball placement this year has been on another level. It's been elite and among the best in the NFL for quarterbacks. But you look at when a not very accurate backup in Gardner Minshew comes in, look at all the tough grabs DeVonta Smith made against Dallas and against New Orleans. And even this past week, there was a big first down in the red zone he got where he's running a crossing pattern over the middle. He's got a defensive back draped all over him, and Jalen Hurts throws the ball behind him. DeVonta makes it look so easy and just turns around awkwardly, but grabs it. And it looked so smooth the way he did it. His body control is absolutely incredible. And his concentration, that one catch where he bobbled the screen like 8 times as he's running. He ran like 5 yards, almost, juggling the football. And he probably hit the football up in the air like 8 times and finally brought it down. It's been so awesome to see these two go completely off. It's the volumes there. If you need them on third down, they're there in the red zone, deep down the field. Even when they only have 4 catches like A.J. Brown had the last 2 weeks, he goes 4 for 95 against New York, 4 for 97 and a touchdown against the Saints. Just throw the ball up to these two. The trust that quarterbacks should have in those two players in every level. It's why I say Smith and Brown are still the best wide receiver duo in the NFL over Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I'm doubling down on that take after seeing what they did this year, because Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I'm not calling them one-trick ponies, but they are not the complete receivers that Smith and Brown are, where any situation, any type of play, those two can make it happen. A contested catch, a screen pass in the red zone, man coverage, off coverage, like whatever you need. Those two have the complete skill set where they can go up and high point the football. They have the speed to, create separation and the elite route running. And they have the toughness too to make, big time grabs, even for a skinny guy like DeVonta. It's been such a joy to watch these guys in 2022 break records. And, the Eagles are elite in 2022 for a lot of the same reasons that they've been good in the past, right? Elite quarterback play, elite trench play on the offense and the defense, a good run game, a good passing game, great coaching, Howie Roseman killing it in the front office. Like, these are all the same reasons they won a Super Bowl in 2017 and why they were so good in the early 2000s. But one thing they have this year that they had to win in spite of back then, not saying they didn't have good weapons, but they didn't have an A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. That's the difference between this team and those teams. They have another gear because they have the best duo of receivers in franchise history. I think that brings them to another level of eliteness that I think those other teams, it's hard to say that the 2017 team didn't have because they won a Super Bowl. But, Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar, as much as we love them in Philly for winning a title, and they were incredible in the Super Bowl in that playoff run, they're not DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown. That's the thing. That's a new addition to the Eagles being great this year, is great receiver play. And you can say the same thing about cornerback play with Darius Slay and James Bradbury. But DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown, if you're confident in anything heading into the postseason, it's that those two are firing on all cylinders and they are playing their best football in the most important spot. And we'll see if that continues. I think it will in the divisional round. So stock up to DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown. Also, stock up to another star, this time on the other side of the ball that's been as hot, as on fire as Smith and Brown. It's Haason Reddick. Finishes the season with 16 sacks. So he's actually the only player, he's one of three that's had a season since 2000 with at least 16 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries. Haason Reddick did that in 2022. TJ Watt did that last year in 2021, and Chandler Jones did it in 2019. Haason Reddick is on an elite tear. Even Reggie White with the Eagles did not have a run like Reddick had this past 2-month stretch where he had a sack in 8 straight games. Reggie White had a sack at least in 7 straight games. Haason Reddick might be, and I don't know if this is me being a prisoner of the moment, but Haason Reddick in 2022 might be the best edge rusher the Eagles have had since Reggie White. I mean, again, I know I was younger, but I remember watching Trent Cole, and Trent Cole was incredible, the second most sacks in Eagles history. But was Trent Cole ever as good as Haason Reddick is right now? Honestly, Brandon Graham, as much as we love Brandon Graham was never as elite as Haason Reddick is right now. Javon Curse, I mean, Clyde Simmons, I don't think any of these, prestigious, legendary Eagles edge rushers of the past, even the year Connor Barwin had 14 sacks or when Jason Babin had 18 in 2011, I don't think anybody was doing what Haason Reddick has done this year with forced turnovers, with sacks, with dropping back in coverage. To be honest, I think he's the best edge player they've had in a single season since Reggie White in the 1990s. And I think he should be a defensive player of the year candidate. So stock up to Haason Reddick. He's a guy that I trust in the playoffs. If you need a big play at the end of a game where he needs to come up with a big time sack, you've got obviously Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, but the guy that I trust, it's kind of like in basketball, last second shot, who's getting the ball, last second play, who's getting to the quarterback. My money's on Haason Reddick. He has been incredible. It's crazy to say that he might not even be the best offseason acquisition of the year because Howie Roseman did trade for A.J. Brown, but Haason Reddick was that first free agent signing. And after a few weeks, everybody's like, oh, they got to do more. And while I agreed, me and Gino kept saying on this show, Haason Reddick was one of the big fish free agents we said they should go out and get. And that was the first move they made. And man, obviously you love all the other moves they made, but that was impactful enough in its own right to start off the 2022 offseason. So stock up to Haason Reddick. He was all over Davis Webb in that game for 4 quarters. Just such a complete, explosive, elite, versatile player that we're so glad is home back in the 2-1-5. And then one final stock up here for the Eagles, and it's Boston Scott. It's incredible how good he is against the New York Giants. I mean, even now players call him the Giant Killer. Miles Sanders was mic'd up for that first game against the Giants in the Meadowlands, and they said, give it to the Giant Killer. Boston Scott had another touchdown on Sunday against New York. He now has 10 touchdowns against New York in his career. Guess how many touchdowns he has for his career? 17. So 10 of 17 touchdowns. He has 3 more touchdowns against the Giants than he has against all other 30 teams combined. He has a touchdown in every game he's played New York. It wasn't just one game. He had 3. No, every single game. If you bet an anytime touchdown for Boston Scott on BetOnline against New York, it happened. I don't know what it is. I mean, now it's creating it has a mantra or, what's a mindset, a mind of its own, this whole Boston Scott versus the Giants legend. And I think that's part of what fuels him now is he wants to keep that up. But how this started, why the timing of Boston Scott being really good always landed on the days he played the Giants. It's just, I don't know, maybe there's a backstory to him hating New York. I have no idea, but Boston Scott continues to be the Giant Killer. All right, guys, we got Stock Down coming up next. This is the Locked On Eagles podcast, and it's sponsored by the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's Bet Online. LOE3 finally done for the year. Gino and I both finished in the positive, so if you bet with Bet Online through Locked On Eagles' LOE3 this year, any Eagles player props, you won money this year. You finish with a positive gain. And Bet Online is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college football, NBA, soccer, you name it. they've got it for you. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline is where the game starts and it continues. Keep betting with BetOnline for the NFL playoffs. All right, everybody, welcome back into this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. One segment to go, and it's our final stock up, stock down of the 2022 season. As I said, stock up to A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith breaking records on Sunday against the Giants for single-season receptions and yardage. Stock up to Haason Reddick, who I think, honestly, is an underrated Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Don't think he's getting the hype this year that he deserves. Up there in pretty much every category with the best of the best, even over guys like Micah Parsons, who is probably going to win the award, I would predict. I think Reddick is right there. And I think, the guys that the committee that votes on this, I really do think Reddick deserves some consideration. Also stock up to the giant killer, Boston Scott. But there are a lot of stock downs to get into here with a 22-16 win over Davis Webb and Giants backups. The fact that, and again, I'm excited now for the playoffs. The playoffs running through Philadelphia is a huge advantage. The number one seed, division title champions in the NFC East. You have Jalen Hurts back healthy now, 2 more weeks to heal that shoulder. You have hopefully Lane Johnson coming back in the divisional round, Josh Sweat. There are a lot of positives to feel good about. The majority of the season, the Eagles dominated. But the fact that it took them the end of the Week 18 matchup against the Giants backups to clinch the division, when a month ago you just needed 1 win, you lose 2 straight, and then you barely beat Giants backups. Not very confidence boosting for sure when it comes to their Super Bowl hopes, but my confidence hasn't really wavered a whole lot. I'm somewhat more skeptical now of, certain players and coaches, but I still agree with the poll I put up yesterday and asked people how much confidence they've lost in the Eagles' chances of winning a title because of the last 3 weeks. Most of you guys said that you didn't lose much confidence. I agree, but at the same time, it's very frustrating, and the Eagles need to take these past 3 weeks seriously and make sure they build from that, learn from that, I should say, not build off of it, because what they did was lackluster, and they finished the season 1-2, not playing their best ball heading into the postseason. So starting with stock down, I think a huge reason for the struggles over the last few weeks, obviously injuries have finally caught up to this team that was atop the league when it comes to a healthy roster for the vast majority of the season. And then, of course, you see guys start to go down like Avonte Maddox and Jordan Davis and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Dallas Goedert, Josh Sweat, Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts. That was tough. That definitely was a reason you started to struggle at the end, but that is the time when you need your coaches to step up even more. Nick Sirianni, Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, and of course, not having great players, having a backup quarterback in, and not having these star players that were out for a certain amount of time, it makes it harder on a coach. The coach can't go out there and play. Execution is the key to football, and you can only scheme so much a victory. But at the same time, I just feel like that Cowboys game on defense, the Saints game on offense, and on defense in the first half, you even look at that Giants game, there were a lot of issues where the coaches did not put their players in the best position to succeed, where you had backups in and you needed to remold the scheme to their strengths. And sometimes that just really didn't happen. I don't think the coaches are in a groove right now heading into the playoffs. Steichen's play calling, Jonathan Gannon's in-game decisions and how long he takes to adjust. Nick Sirianni as well. Do I still trust this coaching staff? For sure. Again, just like most takes, the majority of the season, the Eagles coaching staff has been really good this year as well. But they need to learn from these past 3 games. They need to be better, because in the divisional round, you might be playing Tom Brady. And we know what happened last year. Both times Brady played Jonathan Gannon's defense. Obviously, there's a lot more talent now in Philly on that side of the ball, but Tom Brady scares me against a Jonathan Gannon type of defense. Or if you got to play Dak Prescott again, he carves up Gannon's defense every time he plays them. He did it 3 weeks ago. He did it last year. It's not a good look sometimes for Gannon's defense against some of these quarterbacks. And if you got to play Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco in an NFC Championship game, his game planning is atop the league. It's why he's been so good with a quarterback in Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant last year. So I think definitely stock down right now to coaching. I don't think even against the Giants, it was the best coaching performance from all three guys. And you could even say special teams as well. You could throw Mike Clay in there because special teams was not great. Punting was really bad, kickoff coverage, punt returning as well. Just overall, not a great month of coaching. And I think definitely stock down to Steichen, Gannon, Nick Sirianni. I'm hoping for a bounce back. They have to be better. Again, execution and health is going to be a key moving forward. But at the same time, they definitely have to be better. Steichen and Gannon, though, again, still done a great job this year, enough to be requested by the Houston Texans to interview for their head coaching vacancy. So, who knows? Maybe next year I'll be eating crow saying, not that I don't believe in Steichen and Gannon. I do think for the majority of the time they are good coordinators who I don't want to lose. But maybe next year, they have different coordinators because Houston decides to hire one of them, or another team does as well, like the Carolina Panthers. There's a bunch of teams, the Arizona Cardinals now looking for a new head coach. But I think that's a good thing too, though, is Steichen and Gannon might have a little extra motivation, as if winning a Super Bowl isn't motivation enough, but maybe they have even more motivation to do even better in the playoffs with all these teams evaluating potentially if they're good enough to be their head coach. But for now, I would say over the last 3 weeks, including against the Giants, the fact that you only won 22-16, everybody deserves part of the blame, and I definitely put some of it on coaching. Also stock down to Darius Slay. Darius Slay allowed that touchdown at the end to Kenny Golladay, who only had 4 catches this year. Again, it was only one play, but it was a touchdown to put the Eagles only up by 6 points. And Darius Slay, not that he's been really bad in the second half of the season. He's still been one of the best cornerbacks in football, but I feel like his play has slipped a little bit over the past month and a half. And I wasn't happy about him not taking accountability, even if it wasn't his fault on that 3rd and 30 against Dallas, almost, feeding Josiah Scott to the Wolves as if he doesn't get enough flack for things. And he's clearly not Darius Slay. So you're going to blame him for, most of the issues that do arise when he's around the ball. But at the same time, I feel like Darius Slay should have took at least some blame for that, and he didn't. And I get the complaints people have and I love Slay because he is such a happy-go-lucky guy. But when you're a captain and you're smiling when you get mossed by Kenny Golladay and Davis Webb, and you're only up by 6 trying to clinch the 1 seed in the division, I get why people are frustrated in the moment from that kind of reaction. And Slay, again, still one of the best corners in the league. I don't want him going anywhere anytime soon, but he was top 2 in the lowest passer rating allowed this year for 95% of the year, and he's since dropped to 6th. So not like he's Bradley Fletcher now or Leotis McKelvin, name every awful Eagles corner of the last decade and a half. He's still an elite cornerback, but I feel like his play has slipped at least a little bit over the past few weeks, and he's going to have to pick it back up because while the NFC playoffs are not loaded with talent at the quarterback position, it is loaded at the wide receiver position. San Francisco, you're going to have to play against Brandon Ayuk. Minnesota, you're going to have to play against Justin Jefferson again. Can Slay do what he did week 2 where he erased Jefferson from the face of the earth? Tampa Bay's got Mike Evans and, Chris Godwin. Dallas has CeeDee Lamb. There are a lot of good wide receivers in this conference. I mean, even if Seattle found a way to play you in the divisional round, that's DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. We know Slay and Metcalf's beef in 2020. There are a lot of good, outside of the Giants, pretty much every team has some legitimate weapons, at the wide receiver position. So the Eagles need Darius Slay, just like the coaching, just like anything. The majority of this year, these guys have all been pretty damn great. It's why you won 14 games. But right now, they're not playing their best football, and they definitely need to bounce back in these next 2 games or these next 2 weeks heading into the game that is the divisional round of the NFC playoffs. So I'd say stock down to Darius Slay as well. Not playing his best ball as of late. Still a damn good corner that's been elite this year, but I think he needs a bounce back for sure, and he needs to be playing his best football in the playoffs, as everybody does. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the final stock up, stock down of the Locked On Eagles podcast for 2022. Tomorrow, we got some playoff talk. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Make sure you hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. Thank you always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you the local insight you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your shows. As always, thank you for downloading Locked On Eagles. Thank you for watching and listening. And as always, let's go Birds.